Larissa and Tatiana were sisters. Despite the significant age difference, they were incredibly close. It wasn't readily apparent that there was a 10-year gap between them. Larissa had been the older sister since Tatiana's birth, always by her side. It was quite remarkable because older siblings don't typically spend as much time with the younger ones. But Larissa took care of Tatiana for hours on end, bathing her, changing her, walking with her, and feeding her. She was like a young mother, and their actual mother expressed her pride in Larissa's nurturing nature. The little girl adored the role she played, and all the other children in the courtyard had baby carriages and limbless dolls, but Tatiana grew up with a living doll. However, Larissa was mature enough to understand that her mother was not truly her mother. After giving birth, their real mother fell seriously ill, and many things changed. Her body grew tired, and when Tatiana turned 3, their mother passed away. Since then, Larissa stepped into her mother's shoes. She couldn't even cry for her at the funeral, as Tatiana was in her arms, crying for both of them. Larissa didn't have time for personal emotions, she cried for the both of them. Everyone remarked on how Larissa had grown up faster than she should have. Soon after, they moved to the city, as their father didn't bother asking if they wanted to go. He simply told them to gather their belongings and whisked them away to their grandmother's house. Later, it was revealed that he had started another family, with a new wife and a new son, a boy. He had chosen a new family, new happiness, a new life. Larissa and Tatiana didn't matter anymore. Years went by, and the girls grew up. Larissa finished school, while Tatiana was preparing for the first grade. Larissa understood how difficult it was for their grandparents to support both of them on a pension. Her grandmother never complained, but Larissa could see the poverty they lived in. So, she decided that after school, she would work on a cattle farm. If she wasn't lazy and worked hard, she could earn good money. If she wanted to become a teacher, she knew she had to study extensively, but their grandmother couldn't afford to support 2 students simultaneously. So, Larissa made the decision education could wait. First, Tatiana had to at least finish primary school, and then they would see. When Tatiana became older and more independent, Larissa wouldn't have to hold her hand to school anymore. Maybe then she could pursue her own studies without attending school. However, things didn't go as planned. When Tatiana turned 8, their grandmother passed away, leaving the 2 sisters alone. Larissa remembered her grandmother's words about pride being a sin. She contemplated seeking help from their father. Maybe he had no idea how difficult things were for them, but Larissa refused. She harbored anger toward him, perhaps fearful that he wouldn't take Tatiana, and she couldn't bear to be separated from her sister. She had become a child for him, just as their mother had foretold that Larissa would become a young mother. And so it happened. Larissa didn't take into account one crucial thing: she became entirely devoted to raising Tatiana. Yet, Tatiana grew up somewhat spoiled and lacked direction in life. She floated aimlessly, never taking things seriously. Tatiana loved her sister, and she was a good-hearted girl, but she was somewhat careless. Her mind revolved around expensive nightclubs, getting drunk, and having fun. Larissa's dedication to Tatiana consumed her entirely. She had become both a mother and a father figure to her sister, and she couldn't bear the thought of separating from her. It was as if Tatiana had truly become a child to her, just as her mother had once said, "Larissa is a young mother." As time went by, Larissa realized that while she had focused on caring for Tatiana, she had neglected her own personal growth. She was now 30 years old and still working on the cattle farm, despite being one of the best employees. She wasn't married and had no children of her own. The ticking of the clock reminded her that time was passing, and she felt a sense of urgency to start taking care of herself. Larissa made a decision to prioritize her own well-being. She had spent her whole life living for others, for her mother, her sister, and her grandmother. A friend suggested that she buy a plane ticket and take a trip to the seaside. It was during this vacation that Larissa encountered Mr. John, a decent man who, despite their age difference, seemed to appreciate her wisdom. Larissa found herself drawn to him, and he seemed to reciprocate her feelings. John had been divorced and was searching for a partner in his own age group. Larissa, however, was in no rush to get married, and she wasn't willing to leave her small town. Nevertheless, they formed a bond and enjoyed each other's company. 3 years passed, during which Larissa and Tatiana saw each other rarely. Tatiana continued to live her carefree life as if she were still 18, while Larissa carried a growing concern: why hadn't Tatiana had any children yet? Larissa would bring up the topic, but Tatiana always changed the subject and refused to discuss it seriously.
"We still have time to live for ourselves,"
Tatiana would say.
"Where would you be now if I had decided to live for myself?"
Larissa would retort indignantly, hurt by Tatiana's lack of consideration. However, their arguments were always short-lived, and they would quickly reconcile, shedding tears together and reminiscing about their childhood, their mother, and their father. One day, everything changed. Larissa was at the airport, and among the crowd, she noticed a stranger whose face caught her attention. Pale and with gray hair, he resembled someone she knew. It was her father. Her heart raced as she turned to face him, looking directly into his eyes. She knew he wasn't a stranger because Larissa was the spitting image of her mother. "Dad," she uttered, her voice barely a whisper. Her father's trembling hands reached out to her, and tears welled up in his eyes.
"Tatiana is dead,"
he said, his voice filled with grief. Larissa couldn't comprehend what he was saying. It felt like a cruel joke.
"Hurry! We need to go to the cemetery! They're already burying her!"
he continued, his voice trembling with urgency. John, who was with Larissa, suggested they go together. They arrived just as they were lowering the casket into the grave. The relatives from Tatiana's husband's side stood there emotionless, not shedding a single tear. Larissa felt a wave of antipathy coming from their faces, as if they blamed her for not making it in time. But how could she have known? How could she have guessed? Larissa was asked to say a few words, but the words wouldn't come. She couldn't bid her sister farewell. Suddenly, a thought crossed John's mind. He quickly motioned for the casket to be lifted once again. Everyone looked confused, but they obliged, lifting the casket back up from the grave. John whispered something to Larissa and gently guided her towards Tatiana's lifeless body. He took her hand and placed it on Tatiana's chest, urging her to feel the faint heartbeat. Larissa's eyes widened in disbelief as she felt a feeble pulse beneath her fingertips. With tears streaming down her face, Larissa called out for help. The crowd was filled with a mix of astonishment, hope, and confusion. A doctor who happened to be present rushed forward and examined Tatiana. After a few tense moments, he confirmed that Tatiana was still alive, though barely clinging to life. An ambulance was called immediately, and Tatiana was rushed to the hospital. Larissa held her sister's hand tightly, her heart pounding with a mix of relief and worry. She couldn't believe that Tatiana had been declared dead and almost buried alive. It was a miracle that John had noticed the signs of life, even when everyone else had given up hope. As Tatiana fought for her life in the hospital, Larissa vowed to change their lives for the better. She realized the importance of time, of not taking anything or anyone for granted. She promised herself that she would no longer live solely for others, but also for her own happiness. She would help Tatiana find purpose and guide her towards a more fulfilling life. Tatiana eventually regained consciousness, her eyes fluttering open to the sight of her sister by her side. Larissa's face lit up with joy and relief. She explained what had happened, how Tatiana had been mistakenly declared dead. Tatiana couldn't believe it, but she was grateful to be alive. The near-death experience served as a wake-up call for both sisters. Tatiana realized the reckless path she had been on, and she vowed to change her ways. With Larissa's guidance and support, Tatiana started taking responsibility for her actions. She pursued her education, discovering a passion for art and design. She found a job that allowed her to express her creativity and began to build a more stable and meaningful life. Meanwhile, Larissa didn't let go of her own dreams either. With John's encouragement, she pursued higher education and earned a degree in business management. She opened her own small business, a boutique that showcased local artisans' creations. It became a gathering place for the community, fostering a sense of connection and appreciation for art. Together, Larissa and Tatiana rebuilt their bond, cherishing the second chance they had been given. They supported and uplifted each other through the ups and downs of life. Larissa found love and companionship with John, who became a pillar of strength for both sisters. Years passed, and Larissa and Tatiana flourished in their respective endeavors. They never forgot the fragility of life and the importance of living each day to the fullest. They honored their mother's memory by living with love, gratitude, and a deep appreciation for family. The story of Larissa and Tatiana serves as a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is always hope. It teaches us the value of second chances, the strength of sisterhood, and the power of embracing life's twists and turns. And as they continued on their journey, Larissa and Tatiana inspired others to believe in the transformative power of love and resilience.